How's it going, everyone? Welcome to part 3 of milking maples. I am picking up exactly where I left off with part 2. Man, this stuff smells good. It smells like maple candy. This is 19.5 gallons roughly that we boiled down throughout the day. We have a concentrated level of, it's nearly sap now. It's been a long day. I've got other things to attend to tonight, so I'm not gonna continue working on this at all anymore tonight. What I plan to do is take these pans with the sap and set them in the snow overnight. Alright, now that I got the pans out in the snow, I'm gonna cover them. Keep any of the critters out tonight. I'll put the link to these lids and the pans in the description below. To try and cool these down a little bit quicker, I'm gonna pile snow up against the edges of them. Alright, now that that's done, we'll just let these sit overnight and I'll pick up tomorrow. Alright, it's the next morning. I'm gonna pop these lids off and we'll see if there's any ice in there. If there is, as I've mentioned before, that's pure water. We can remove that and that'll reduce the amount of time that we have to spend doing the finished boil inside. Want to make sure that we don't get any of the snow in our sap. Obviously that would increase our boiling time. Alright, let's take a peek. Alright, I don't see any ice, which means we're at a pretty good concentration level. A lot of that moisture, a lot of that pure water must have burned out already. A little bit of ice on the edge there. That looks great. Okay, I'm going to put this back on for a second. And I'm going to pour it into this pot, which we'll be able to take inside then and do a more controlled boil process. This is when it gets a little bit more technical and hands-on. You don't want to ruin your sap at the very end of this long process. Alright. I don't know if you could see at the very end of the pour there was a bunch of ash and sugar sand. I realized I probably should have filtered it right now as I put it into this pan. That was my original intention and I forgot to. The filtration process is pretty important, so I'm going to pour this back into our evaporator pan. And I'm going to rinse this out now and then I'll filter it. Like I should have done the first time, I'll filter it into this pan before we throw it back onto the stovetop. Alright, I rinsed this out and I wiped it down with paper towel to try and remove any excess moisture in it. This is the filter I'll be using. It came with the kit that I linked for the taps and the hoses, the tubing. Unfortunately, I don't have the proper holder for it. I do have my canning funnel, which I'm just going to stick this in and we'll make it work. But they do have a really nice filter holder that spans across the top of your pot, and this sits really nicely in. I don't have one at the time. I should probably get one. I will link that in the video description as well. Sarah's going to give me a hand since I don't have the proper holder. I need someone to help hold this. So I'll start pouring it in. This is going to get a little moist and it'll form to the funnel. Alright, ma'am, can you show us what you caught in the filter? Look at all that. So that's a lot of ash. I do see sugar sand down in there too. That's the little minerally bits that I told you will sink to the bottom of the finished product if you don't filter it a couple of times. So yeah, alright, so that's the first filtration process. Now we can take this inside and start boiling it. We're back inside now, which means we have a lot of normal sounds of life taking place. So I'm going to switch over to audio overlay. Before starting the final evaporation phase, it's a good idea to know what temperature water boils at your elevation. We live at about 978 feet above sea level, which means our water boils at around 210 degrees Fahrenheit. In order to reach the syrup state, you need to bring the sap to 7.5 degrees above the temperature at which water boils for your location. If this isn't your first time boiling sap, then you might know the key signs to look for to visually be able to tell when your sap has turned to syrup. However, if you're new to sugar making, it's a good idea to have a candy thermometer on hand. Notice how the sap is boiling differently than it has been. The bubbles are much smaller and they are taking over the surface of the sap almost as though it's going to boil over. This is a telltale sign that you are very near syrup. Once we've reached syrup, I pull it off the stovetop for one last filtration process. I use both the pre-filter I showed earlier in this video as well as a grade 90 cheesecloth. I like to store the syrup in mason jars because it's what I have available, but there are plenty of decorative storage options out there as well. Once sealed, the syrup-filled jars can be stored at room temperature until opened, at which point you need to store the jar in the refrigerator. I've got a couple minutes of semi-quiet while Emmy and Sarah are downstairs. I still got Elliot up here bouncing around making some noise, but while I'm finishing filtering the rest of the sap, or syrup now it's syrup, I'm going to do a little taste test on here. I already noticed compared to last year's haul, this is much darker, much richer. That's because I believe one of the maples I tapped on my neighbor's property to the south of me is actually a sugar maple, whereas the remainder of the trees that we tapped are silver maples, which produce kind of a very light colored syrup. I'm expecting this to probably be a lot sweeter than my haul was last year, so let's see. This is still nice and warm. Oh yeah. Man, that is candy. That's much sweeter than it was last year. Has a great maple flavor to it. It's got more depth to it than last year's haul. Maybe because I did it outside with the fire below it and everything. Probably imparted a good flavor on it. That's really good. That's the best syrup I've made so far. I mean, it's the second time I've made it, but That's really good. So I'm gonna finish off straining the rest of this, and then I've got a whole nother batch waiting out there to boil down. So after this is done filtering, I'll probably have about 2.5 pints off that first boil down. So the second boil down, let's say it produces the same. So for my first week of harvest, which was a full week on 2 trees, the last 6 trees were only tapped for half a week, if that. And I managed to harvest 5 pints, which is pretty good. And there's still a few weeks of sap flow left. You wanna try it?
No, right now I wash my hands.
She has to wash her hands. All right, we're gonna get Sarah a new spoon, because COVID-19.
Okay, where?
Just dunk her in there and give it a try. Let us know what you think.
It's actually very sugary.
It's very sweet, right?
That's really good.
Real
I'm actually
syrup.
surprised.
Yeah, right? It turned out a lot better than last year's.
I like how warm it is.
So obviously, real syrup is quite rich compared to the store-bought corn syrup type syrup. The fake stuff. Real syrup is really rich, so you don't need very much of it, but it's a lot thinner too, whereas the stuff you buy at the store, the artificial syrup, they make it thicker. Real syrup's not like that, it's kind of thin. But even this is thicker than what our harvest was last year.
Very good. Good job.
Thanks. The wife approves. I'm going to give each of my neighbors a jar of syrup for allowing me to tap their trees. But I wanted to show you something really cool here. I picked this up off Amazon. I can provide the link in the description. This goes onto any regular mouth mason jar. This jar is really hot still, sorry. And voila, it turns it into a little dispenser. So you can just keep this in the fridge. It'll last a long time. Real syrup might develop a little bit of a mold on top once it's in the fridge for quite a while. But there's nothing wrong with the mold. You can skim it off the top, I believe. I've never actually had mold develop on mine, but I believe you do your own research just in case I'm wrong. I believe you can just skim that mold right off and keep using it. Maybe heat it up, kill any bacteria or anything. But the sugar content is so high in this now that it's kind of shelf stable, almost. Still want to keep it refrigerated though. So I guess that's gonna wrap up part 3 of milking maples. As I've mentioned, we still have a few weeks of harvest time left. I'm gonna repeat steps 2 through 3 a couple more times here, a couple more weekends. And all weather depending, Mother Nature determines how much sap or how much syrup we're gonna make every year. But yeah, it's a fun process. I really enjoy doing it. As mentioned in my previous video, if you're interested in getting your hands on one of our evaporators, my buddy Jake and I are still making them, so we can build one for you. Information on that will be in the video description below. I'm gonna get started on the final steps of that last batch outside and enjoy some of this syrup. Hope you enjoyed the process. Take care, everybody.
She can have a temper tantrum, and now she's quiet.
Sorry if this is kind of dark. So after we did the final process on our sap that we collected yesterday, we ended up with 5.5 pints worth of syrup. So that's 156 pints of sap boiled down to 5.5 pints of syrup. Grandpa's back there. He came to help me today. I had to do an impromptu boil down tonight because we collected a ton of sap today. Since I emptied my pails out yesterday, in one day we collected 18.5 gallons of sap. My pails were nearly full on each tree, so I had to do another boil tonight. I wasn't planning on doing it, but here we are. My pails would have overflowed in a couple of days had I let them stay. So it's been a long weekend of sugar making. Oh, and also I kind of dropped a pint of finished syrup on our countertop and lost a whole pint. So that's a bummer because at 40 to 1, that's 40 pints of sap to make 1 pint of syrup, and I destroyed it. But oh well, you live and you learn. So hope you guys enjoyed my 3-part series on milking maples and had a good time this weekend with me, because I did. Take care, everyone.